Hello, everybody. Welcome to our Digital Trust Talks. My name is Maggie. I lead customer marketing here at Keyfactor, and I am very excited to be joined by Chris Hickman, our Chief Security Officer at Keyfactor, and Tomas Gustavsson, our Chief PKI Officer at Keyfactor, to talk about Keyfactor Connect. So we just wrapped up a 6-city tour for Keyfactor Connect. And this is our local customer user group sessions where we meet with PKI champions and Keyfactor users around the globe to talk about the biggest trends in digital trust. So this year we were all over the globe. We were in Dallas, we were in Atlanta, we were in San Jose, Munich, Stockholm, Utrecht. So thank you all so much for those of you who did join us. And some of the topics we covered were agentic AI, quantum computing, shortening of certificate lifespans, tightening compliance demands. And we heard firsthand how our customers and organizations are tackling these next waves of disruption. So that is what we're going to be getting into today and kind of giving a highlight of what we learned as we did this tour. So jumping into our first question, both Tomas and Chris had the opportunity to join us in a few cities. So I want to kind of understand, what were your biggest takeaways from those conversations? And Tomas, we'll start with you.
Okay. Well, one of my takeaways was that there is a large amount of changes coming on, and organizations are definitely concerned about how to kind of cope and navigate that, because there's some knowns and some unknowns, and how to prepare for the future in a way that doesn't put the organization under too much stress, because there are a lot of competing priorities, and even if some look farther away, you have to start now and things like that. So it's a very difficult prioritization for organizations now, and everyone has limited resources, maybe not the right word, but expertise can easily be overstretched.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think Thomas not surprisingly hit the nail on the head there. Our customers are in a state of change that we don't often see in PKI, with so many things coming all at once, and many organizations are concerned not only about how are they going to effectuate this change, but I think as Thomas articulated, our customers are increasingly concerned about making mistakes, and so much change in an environment that isn't accustomed to having this much change forces you to rethink the dynamics of PKI in your organization and certificates, and forces you to rethink how you are going to approach the day-to-day management of those assets, and how you're going to make sure your organization doesn't end up in a worse place as a result of this sort of industry imposed change, especially as it relates to the 47-day certs.
Yeah, absolutely. And those were big topics of conversation with our customers at Connect. Just kind of following up on that, what do you think were some of the discussions that resonated most with customers around these topics that we discussed, especially around these 4 disruptors: AI, quantum, shortening lifespans, and then automation and compliance? What do you think resonated most with our customers, and themes that really surprised you?
Yeah, the biggest theme was, how do I automate this stuff? Plain and simple. From our customers in the room, how do I get a better level of automation? How do I introduce agility into my cryptographic landscape? Was certainly a big one. I think the other one that maybe wasn't specifically discussed but was a reoccurring theme, because it transcends all of them too, is how do I even get a handle on what is in my organization? So the discovery, the inventory, that specifically lends itself more to a post-quantum migration, post-quantum cryptography migration, but it is part of the fabric or the landscape that needs to be taken into account to achieve agility over time. So my big takeaway there was, all of this change just means, like I said, we've got to address cryptography in a different manner. And the other piece that I heard was organizations are struggling still to get that level of visibility from the C-suite, specifically to make this a priority, especially given the shrinking timelines. As every day goes by, that timeline gets shorter, and that's still a struggle for the technical people raise that inside of their organizations.
Yeah, I think they're just finishing what you said. Their organizations are, you have to get budgets in order to do anything, even if you know what you should do. If there's no budget, nothing will in practice be done. So that's of course, I mean, it's always a struggle to get budgets in organizations. But now, of course, with all this shift going on, and I agree that automation, I was even myself surprised by how, especially some of the front runners among our customers and partners, how they are really approaching automation and making changes and modernizations to have fully automated systems or PKI and cryptography management, which is, of course, as well, because that actually helps in all the other kind of disruptors, as you mentioned, quantum, 47-day life cycles, agentic AI. If you have a modern automated thing, it is definitely a good place to start because it's going to help you. It's not a fix for one of those, it helps all of those. And I agree, the discovery piece is the one that gets a lot of attention, rightfully so.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, at Keyfactor, we're talking a lot about these 4 major disruptors that we're touching on here, and that was a big theme at Connect. So these disruptors are agentic AI, quantum, shorter lifespans, automation, and compliance. So we're going to kind of dig into each one. So let's start with AI. So based on your conversations at Connect and kind of what you're seeing out in the market, like how are our customers thinking about agentic AI, both as a security threat, but also as a tool to improve efficiency in terms of PKI and identity management?
It's a little bit from my side, a bit all over the map, I would say. Some are not interested, if you would put it like that. They're dealing with security infrastructure. So for them, AI is, it's someone else's use case. It doesn't concern them, so to say. While others are really looking into it, how to, what are the security parts, or how does identity play into agentic AI, and how does your security infrastructure support that?
Yeah, I mean, I asked the question in the room in the sessions that I was in about the agentic AI and how it's how is it coming across as across the community, and honestly, not a lot of hands went up when I asked the question. Have you been asked to participate in the agentic AI conversations yet, as it relates to the PKI and security organizations, which in itself is quite troubling, to be very honest with you, considering the level of attention that AI is getting within organizations, that the security folks are not part of the conversation. So I think that is still a worthwhile conversation to have, and that came out in these events. But there was also in one of the connects, and these connects are not scripted. They are also very freeform, where we want to talk to our customers. We got some very valuable feedback from our customers of what they would see as useful AI in our products and what they would not see as useful AI, and some great recommendations as to how we as an organization may want to look at introducing AI and future into our products in a way that would meet their needs, but also meet their comfort level. So that sort of was some really valuable feedback, I think, into the product team directly from our customer base in the room.
And one CISO I spoke to mentioned kind of, AI or AI agents, and these things are more or less, I mean, it's software after all. So if he would prefer that you can use established software security best practices and frameworks and architecture to secure these, say, new pieces of software. So in one aspect, it's a new thing, but in another aspect, it's also things we have largely seen before.
Yep, absolutely. All right, next up is quantum. This is the big one that Keyfactor, we're always talking about. So I think some themes that we've seen is that quantum can feel like a distant concern, but it is moving fast. So while at Connect, what did you hear from customers about post-quantum readiness and kind of preparing for that safe migration to quantum? And do you have any practical steps that you can recommend to help our customers prepare?
So yeah, I mean the reality is that the quantum is a reality. The conversations around will there be a cryptographically capable quantum computer at some point in time, so on and so forth, is sort of fading in the background. Organizations are preparing and are getting serious about their preparations. In the conversations that I was having, at the time we were having some of these connects, people were asking for budget for next year, and to Tomas's point, you need budget to be able to do things. Quantum resilience, if you will, quantum security, and the adoption of post-quantum cryptographic algorithms was definitely on the forefront of everybody's asks. A lot of that around the discovery piece. Can't fix what I can't see. I can't see everything today because I'm not suitably enabled. Filling that gap is a priority, obviously, for organizations. So when you talk about steps, that's definitely step number one, is to get a program in place, but also get an idea of what do you have inside of your organization. And then from that, I've been, when I'm talking to people, I'm definitely encouraging a risk-based approach for the migration. You are going to find that there is a lot of stuff in your organization, and you're not going to be able to change it all on day one. It's not possible, and it's very risky to even try. So what are the things that are most valuable to your organization in the way of assets, in the way of intellectual property? What presents the greatest risk to you as an organization? Of course, that's different for every organization and every vertical. And then start one by one to narrow down what are the steps that I need to take for that, in line with the current technology that's available, and the standards that are still being developed. So at the base of that, although, is a message of agility. I've been accused of saying this too much, so I'll say it again. If you build the right foundation, you can build anything on top of it. You need to build it in such a way that allows you to be agile and nimble as things change. And if you make a decision one way or another that is probably the right decision at the time, if it turns out to need to be reevaluated or changed moving forward, and you built agility into your program, then that is an easier change to make. You're building now for a future foundation with cryptography that is an actively managed asset in the organization, not just a one-time change of one algorithm to the other.
Yeah, when it comes to practical steps, I would maybe fill in that, get a organized quantum readiness program. There's a lot of guides out there with PQC maturity model or maturity indexes and such, which has a lot of help. And if you were looking at this, a couple of months ago and feeling that things were not ready for prime time, look again. Things have happened immensely fast in just 6 months. So it is, from a practical point of view, now is the time to start to actually experiment or test for your critical use cases, as you have obviously found out after following Chris's advice. You know what to protect first, and now you can actually start testing the key components of that. It's the technology is there for a lot of things, not everything, but that's also why you need to start testing early to find out where the gaps are and the remaining gaps.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to add, Maggie, I think every major geography or geographical region and country now have released guidance on the plans as it relates to sensitive and critical infrastructure, so on and so forth. Read those plans, take a look at them, see what is happening around you in your geography to make sure you're not making decisions that exclude you from being able to interact with those entities going forward as well. So it's not just, hey, what can I do? But it's also a good way to make sure that you put guardrails up on what maybe you shouldn't do to protect how your business has to interoperate and communicate with other elements external to your organization.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think the big takeaway that we saw at Connect is that migrating to post-quantum is a multi-year process. It takes time. It's a big undertaking. It is daunting, but the key is to start. And as Chris said, map out those plans and just get started, because that's better than waiting. But yes, as Chris mentioned, compliance was big. So that was kind of our next major theme that we discussed. So what are some of like the biggest regulatory or audit challenges that you've been hearing about from customers, and what is typically your response? Because Keyfactor can support our customers in staying on top of these. So kind of what are you seeing, and how can Keyfactor help?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from the European Union, so the European Union loves regulation. So there are, the big ones, NIS2 or NIS2. There's CRA, like the Cyber Resilience Act, and there's even more. There's several more coming, or already kind of voted for and just waiting to become in action. And so those are, and the key things with those, most of them are that are not technology specific as they should, but they do talk about cyber hygiene and best practices, cryptography, which just kind of follows automatically. Then when eventually old algorithms are deprecated, they become immediately kind of mandatory under those regulatory schemes, which do really affect people in critical infrastructure, IT device vendors, finance. That's kind of a no-brainer, and these. So those are a couple of large ones.
Yeah, and I think, Tomas, it's your observation around the fact that these regulations don't specifically call out you have to do this algorithm or this type of post-quantum, but in North America there's a number of regulations around various industries, finance, credit card payment, banking, so on and so forth, the medical devices, even healthcare, that do call out a standard of ensuring protection of data and ensuring compliance and taking reasonable steps to mitigate risk. And as an example, I was talking to a financial institution not too long ago, and the statement was made that 2 years ago my auditors couldn't spell PKI, and now they want to know what my post-quantum migration plans are. Shows that shift in holding organizations to a standard of, you need to be thinking about this, you need to have a plan in place at this point in time, and you need to have the ability to execute on that plan, because there are regulatory and compliance pieces that come into play. Even in this side of the pond, where in North America, where regulation doesn't necessarily tend to be as stringent, there's still a compliance element that organizations are being held to.
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely.
And we see that in other regions as well, coming up in Asia, as we noticed during the PQC conference 2 weeks ago. And one thing we talked about with another CISO in the financial industry a couple of months back was that, you could procrastinate theoretically, but his response was that no CISO in the financial industry today would actually accept that kind of risk going forward, even if you think, well, I'm not going to be here in 5 years when a cryptographically relevant quantum computer arrives, but no one would take that risk now.
Yep. All right, great. I'm going to move on to our final disruptor that we covered. And this is another big one. It is the shorter certificate lifespans. So as we all know, the CAB Forum is now mandating 47-day TLS certificates by 2029, which means that for our customers, their most critical certificates are going to go from an annual renewal to a monthly fire drill. So with that, we are, emphasizing the importance of automation. So how are organizations managing the operational impact of these renewals, and where are you guys seeing the biggest automation gaps?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, because it's a forced change on the organization. Unlike some of the others where there has been time to prepare and so on and so forth. This one's actually happening relatively quickly, because it steps down from almost a year today down to 47 days over the next essentially 3 years, which is a relatively short period of time. All things given. The only answer to this is to automate. Plain and simple. If you have certificates at any scale, of course, these are publicly rooted certificates, not necessarily all of your certificates, but if you've got any number of them, you simply cannot manage them manually anymore. Not only that, but if I have to make a change once a year, that means I have a change configuration risk of misconfiguration once a year, taking it down to once a month. That's now 12 a year, a possible misconfigurations or fat fingering something that shouldn't be. So the risk element goes up considerably there. I think the biggest gap for organizations personally that I've seen, and this isn't necessarily coming out of Connect, but there's some really good feedback from the folks in the room in Connect, is that automation is a multi-functional task that needs to take place. It's a it spans different parts of the organization, right? And if you don't have buy-in up front from those other elements in the organization, you're going to sort of be pushing the proverbial rock uphill for a long time. Getting buy-in early to say, hey, this change is coming. We can automate this. We can take this workload off your hands. Get your load balancer folks to be okay with that early on. Your web server folks, everywhere in the organization you need to automate those certificates facilitates the actually getting it done. And to sort of elevate that conversation up from the practitioner to sort of the CISO type level, right? For the CISO, it's all about building resilience into the systems, right? And so if you can go to them and say, hey, this change is coming, automation builds resilience back in to make sure that we don't have those outages. It builds continuity and like I said, resilience back in. Then getting that CISO level buy-in to help smooth out any of the rough spots, if you will, over these other groups that may not want to have the automation done or maybe standing in the way of getting it done will help considerably. So it's really about that cross-functional organizational perspective versus just hey, we're only going to do this because we're the PKI people and we don't want to have to manually manage certs. That seems to get a different type of result.
Yeah, we see large organizations are still today doing external certificates replacements manually, but calculating on it, they'll see 8 to 10 times workload, which means, of course, 8 to 10 times more the work people have to do, which is a direct budget implication. I guess one thing that we are discussing is that these 47 days is for external facing certificates only, not for internal. Theoretically, so we had the discussions on how do you see this for internal certificates, where you can, for most cases, you could still choose whatever lifetime you want, 10 years if you like, basically. But some organizations are seeing this as a consistency feature, as they have to automate externally. They want to also limit the validity of internal certificate just to make the policy and processes harmonized across all certificate management, which makes things actually easier, even though it might sound harder to also replace internal certificates more often. It when it has become a process and internal policy, it actually makes everything much smoother across the organization. And a last point, which kind of is often missed, is that it's not only the certificate validity, but also the domain validation that drops even further. So today, you have to kind of prove your ownership of a domain name, which you will have to do for every reissuance next when it, as the validity times of certificates drops.
Yeah, and it's interesting because there is anecdotal evidence in a completely unscientific poll that I did. That there has been a mirroring of lifetimes for the internal certs when the lifetime of the publicly rated or external certs drops. So organizations, that was it used to be an external cert was 5 years, 3 years, 1 year. Now we're on our path to 47 days. If you look at what people are accepting as a risk tolerance for their internal certs, there is actually a mirroring that has happened along the same lines. So where before you do a 5-year cert, you bring that down to a 2-year cert to a 1 year. Most people are now doing 1 year for their internal certs. And a couple of organizations that I talked to in some of the conversation in the room, there are organizations that are looking at their internal certs now with the right level of automation, taking those down to, for instance, a 90-day cycle for some of the risk mitigation. So while the CAB form decision does not apply to internal certs. There does seem to be this odd coupling of what happens to external certs in the lifecycle management game also happens to internal certs. So, like I said, completely unscientifically proven, but there is anecdotal evidence that is suggesting that.
Yeah, and it actually can empowers the security or PKI teams to kind of clean up internal usage, where many in the best organizations, there's been some bad practices employed for internal certificates. Now this empowers the organizations to get things under control better, both externally and internally.
Yeah, absolutely. It is an operational challenge and it's a mandate, but it is also introducing opportunity to improve security practices as well. All right, wonderful. Those were some really great takeaways. And I think it's pretty clear from our conversations that we had at Connect that digital trust is moving fast and that PKI teams have a lot on their plate going into 2026. So some of the takeaways that we distilled from Connect were: one, automation is critical. It is not a nice to have, it is necessary, especially as we see these mandates and these 47-day certs come into play. Quantum readiness, it's not just theory. It is something that needs to be implemented into your roadmap. It's something you need to start preparing for today. And then also on top of that, compliance pressure, especially in EMEA, but across the globe, it is reshaping PKI programs. And then last but not least is that digital trust, it's now a business enabler, as we were saying. It's not just a security function, it's a business level practice. So before we wrap up, Tomas, Chris, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share from your conversations at Connect? And what's your outlook heading into 2026?
2026 is finally the year of PKI, or another year of PKI and the year of PQC.
Yeah, no, I agree. 2026 is going to, for a lot of organizations, redefine how they look at PKI and how they look at cryptography in general. Organizations have no choice. It will be painful for some, but there are solutions out there to help you. It is going to set up organizations. Those will be successful in the migration to PQC, and those that will struggle will likely be based on the decisions that are made in 2026 by the organization. So I look forward to our continued conversation in these rooms with these Connect events, because the feedback we get is valuable, and the opportunity to share with our customers lessons that we're learning as we go, and hearing from them how they're applying those is incredibly valuable to our organization.
Yeah, I would really like to thank all our customers and partners who share their valuable insights with us, because we're also, every organization is a learning organization, including us, and we share and learn.
Yes, absolutely. And that's what Connect is all about. It's about learning from one another, having those conversations. So it was an amazing program. Thank you again to our customers who came out. We had the opportunity to spend time with over 200 customers across these 6 cities. And please stay tuned for next year. We will be in even more cities throughout the year, and we will be letting you know when we're headed to a city near you. So thank you both so much for the conversation, and we'll see you on the next Digital Trust Talk.